Okay. So we are tonight continuing what we started, or today, last week, on the effect of Mashiach on the world. And we finished off by talking about the fact that the Rambam discusses all the shefa, all the tremendous abundance that we're going to have in the time of Mashiach, that it's really it's a continuation really of our ability to be able to keep mitzvahs fully. And because that's really the purpose of this world, so then when we keep mitzvahs fully, the whole world is then also reaches its potential. So today we're going to look at some of the Iyunim on this particular topic. I'll start off, and then whoever else would like to pick up, will let me know. With the guys, when I see you're here, so if you want to read, just yes, unmute yourself, show yourself, and I'll know you're ready. So Shnei B'Yom B'Tikun Umus La'asi. So this is in a sense a little bit of a review of what we did last week in some Iyunim, and then we can start the next chapter. So B'Tocha Perach Nispar Shematarosin Shol Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach Hi Gilim Achusi Yisparach Al Baya Olam. So we explained that the whole point of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach is it's the way that the way that Machos Hashem is revealed over the entire world, specifically for the Goyim. And that way, it's really a continuation of the revelation of Machos Hashem over the Jewish people. It starts with the Jewish people, and then that continues on to the rest of the world. And this is how the Rebbe explains it in Likutei Sichos and Chelik Chavav. However, what we want to look at here is the fact that there are some other places, and it's here in the footnotes, look at the Sichos Chelik Vayishlach, and Chelik Tezvav, and Chelik Chav, and a number of places, and again, Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, but the Rebbe explains Mitzvahs B'nei Noach in a very different way. Shesheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, hein, Tanai, V'siyua, Hama'ef Sha'es Avodas Shal Yisrael. In those places, the Rebbe explains that the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach is in a way to help. It enables the Jewish people to do their avodah. In other words, when the Goyim all keep Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, then the world is Yishuv, it's a settled world. There's peace in the world, and then Bnei Yisrael are able to fulfill their Sheva Mitzvahs properly. Api Divrei Chazal, Shekol Ha'olam, Kol Umas Ha'olam, Nivra B'Shvil Yisrael B'Shvil HaTorah. And this is based on the fact that the Chazal say that the entire world, including all the nations of the world, are actually created for the Jewish people and for the Torah, as we know from the word Bereshis. So too, with regard to Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, Shematarasin Litzur Ba'olam Matzav Mitzvukon, Shabbai B'nei Yisrael Yichanim Lasais as a Vaidasim Karai. So based on that idea that the entire world is created for Bnei Yisrael and for Torah, that means that the Bnei Noach, the whole point of keeping Sheva Mitzvahs for them is for them to be able to to have a world that is settled, like I mentioned before, and then Bnei Yisrael can actually do their avodah properly. They don't have to worry about anything. They don't have to worry about wars. They don't have to worry about their earning enough money or protecting their homes or whatever it is. They can sit and learn Torah and do mitzvahs without any worry. So we have to understand as we mentioned before in this chapter, that this would be a difference between the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach that was given before Matan Torah. So the way to explain what seems to be a contradiction, is to say that this first idea that the Sheva Mitzvahs is just to have a world that's a settled world, that was really just as a preparation for Matan Torah. And that differentiates between Mitzvahs B'nei Noach Shla'achar Matan Torah, but Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach that is kept after Matan Torah is not because Noach got it, but really because it's given to Bnei Yisrael to give to the nations. Sha'az nikna bahem bashmas chadasha shayidei mitzvahs elo miskalas machus yisbarach b'olam. So once we had Matan Torah, then we see that Sheva Mitzvahs took on a new meaning, because now, since at Matan Torah, this was a revelation of the Machos Hashem over the Jewish people, that's why the Bnei Yisrael were also told it's in the Torah that we have to educate the world on Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, and that is an extension of revealing the Machos of Hashem on the world. So the Kudisichas Chelik of Gimel that was actually footnoted already in the parak. The Rebbe explains what does this mean? What is going to be the rectification of all these nations of the world in the future? And we can explain this in two different ways. What will happen? Either in one way, we could say it's a continuation of the Gili of Machas Hashem over the Jewish people that extends. So as an extension of the fact that Machas Hashem will be completely revealed over the Jewish people, it then extends onto the nations of the world. And that's how we explained it, B'Sach HaParak. Or we can explain it as one of the conditions and one of the things that are going to help Bnei Israel reach their potential. Because the nation of the world are no longer doing evil, no longer destroying, no longer causing war, no longer protesting around the world, no longer making our lives miserable, then we can sit and we can be free to deal with Torah mitzvahs as we are supposed to. Now, based on these two things, these two explanations, in other words, is it just a continuation of Malchus Hashem over the Jewish people that extends to the nations, or is it about the nations being able to, not causing trouble so we can do ourselves properly? The Rebbe should say that these really explain two different ways, two different opinions about what the status of the standing of the world, of the nation of the world in the future. Whether there is a will of Hashem to have Machas Hashem specifically over the nations, then if it's about, if Hashem wants, innately there is a Ratzon for Hashem to be the king over the entire world, including the Ummah Olam, then the nations have to have some sort of entity themselves that you could say then that Machas Hashem, that Hashem is ruling over them as well. However, if you say that the nations of the world, their whole avodah, their whole existence is just to help Bnei Israel, then there's no need to consider that they will have to have their own independence or importance in and of themselves. And if that was the case, that there was no need for them to be important now in their own right, then we could say that in the future they will all be like a Bad Knani. Now there in that Sicha, the Rebbe says it's like the first opinion, that what shetikun ha'umos hu hemshech v'tetzah mashlim shel Yisrael v'hevim lekach misbar le'opasach haparak. So in that Sicha, the Rebbe discusses this based on the first opinion, that in the future, the Machas Hashem over Bnei Israel will then be extended to the nations of the world, and that's how we explained it in the parak, that they have to, if Machas Hashem is going to rule over the nations of the world, also that means the nations have to have some sort of their importance, and they're not like Avodim, they will be their own government, their own nations, yet they will be under the Machas of Bnei Israel and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Machas of Moshiach. And these two really ideas of these two explanations about the Ummos in the future really parallel the two general ideas of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach that we said before. Is Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach there only to keep the world, going smoothly, so that Bnei Israel are free to do Torah mitzvahs, or is it an extension of Malchus? And the idea of before and after Matan Torah, we find that Rebbe goes according to the idea of after Matan Torah, that it's also an extension of Malchus Hashem. So where else do we see these two different ideas? These two different ways of explaining Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. We could also find these two different ways of looking at it applicable to the end of the chapter, where we talk about what the world will be like in the future. Shia b'roif shefa v'shalom, where the Rambam says it's going to be full of a tremendous abundance and peace. V'huva le'el b'yoro shel Rebbe, she'ashefa v'ashlemus shia ba'olam lo'asid hu hemshech v'tetzah shel shlemus hamitzvos aydei b'nei Yisrael. So, as we explained last week, and as we explained in this particular chapter, the Rebbe explains this to mean that the shefa that will be in the world is really, again, a continuation of the shlemus mitzvahs. In other words, when Bnei Israel when the nation of the world are no longer causing us any issues, and that we are, it's machos of Mashiach, machos of Hashem over the entire world, and then Bnei Israel could do mitzvahs completely. As a result of that, the whole world then has shefa and abundance because the entire world can reach its potential. B'Hilchos Tshuva, Kasav Rambam before Shahet. However, we find in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam actually writes very explicitly the exact opposite of this. What does the Rambam write there? Hivtichana b'Torah. We were promised in the Torah, She'im nasa oisa v'simcha of tuvas nevesh, v'nege b'chachmasa tami, that if we fulfill the Torah, we do it b'simcha, with joy and with the tuvas nefesh, and we are busy with studying the Torah and its chachma always, then sheyas memeno kol hadbarim hamaynim ha'sadim milasaisa. Then, as a reward, Hashem will remove everything that holds us back from doing the Torah properly. And then Hashem will give us all the good things that will strengthen us and make it easier for us to complete the Torah. In other words, from the Rambam, Hilchos Tshuva, it comes very clear, that comes back to that first opinion. It's saying, the Rambam seems to be saying very explicitly that all the shefa, all the abundance that we're going to have is there just to help us to fulfill the mitzvahs properly. Rambam then continues and says, and this is the meaning of all the abundance and the peace that we're going to have in the times of Mashiach. מפני זה נסעבו כל ישראל נביאים וחכמים למעשה משיח, כדי שינוחו ממלכויות שאינן מניחס לנו לעסוק בתורה ובמצוות כהן, וימצא להם מרגוע וירבו בחכמה. לפי שבעשרה ימים תר בהדיה והחכמה באמש, שנאמר, כי מלא הארץ דעת השם. So there, again, the Rambam is saying that what? That it's for this very reason, just for the reason that we'll have this good, that the B'nai, that all the abundance we'll have will help us to do Torah mitzvahs. The Rambam says, and that is why all our Nevi'im, all our Chachamim wanted the times of Mashiach, because then we don't have to worry about the other nations of the world. We'll have the peace. We'll be able to do Torah mitzvahs properly, and and when we are in that sense of calm, and we don't have to worry about things because there'll be so much an abundance of everything, and we'll have so much Chachma and everything else. Then that's how we're going to be able to sit and just learn and not worry about anything else. Well, for Fibir so based on what the Rambam is saying, Hilchos Tshuva, Nimtze Sha'amatav Ham'ula She'yishra Ba'alim La'asid Lavai, it seems that the Rambam is saying that this tremendous, lovely situation we're going to have in the future, who kisiyua v'achshara l'shleimus kima mitzvah v'yidei Yisrael, like it shalai. So the Rambam seems to be saying this is a preparation. This is like the abundance we're going to have them is going to pave the way to make it easier for us to complete the mitzvahs, and not like we said in our parak, where we said that it's actually a result of keeping the mitzvahs. When we keep the mitzvahs properly, we have abundance, or we have abundance in order to make it easier to keep the mitzvahs. Which is it? L'chara tamua keitzim afarsha Rebbe yasibi Rambam b'Hilchos Melech Mashiach ba'evan shayna midivrav atma b'Hilchos Tshuva. So it seems strange, or it seems like wondrous for us, like a puzzling. How is it that the Rebbe explains the words of the Rambam in Hilchos Mashiach exactly opposite to what the Rambam explicitly says in Hilchos Tshuva? However, again, based on everything we've learned, our ears should be perking up, and we should realize, wait a second, we've seen this before, right? We've seen before how the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva takes a different opinion to what the Rambam writes in Hilchos Melachim, and it's not a contradiction. So, based on what we learned before about the differences we've done this a number of times in our earlier chapters, where we see the difference between the halachas that the Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva and the halachas that are in Hilchos Melachim, in Hilchos Mashiach. So, based on that, we can also understand this difference. B'Hilchos Tshuva medaber Rambam al ha'adam hamavakosh te'els b'avaydasai. So in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam is talking about doing tshuva. So there, the Rambam emphasizes what is in it for a person, right? When we talk about tshuva, tshuva is someone does something wrong and he wants to do tshuva. So the point the Rambam emphasizes there is what's in it for me, right? What happens? What is the best benefit for a person in his avodah? And then the Rambam is trying to say that the real purpose, the main goal that every person really should have is not a gashmistic goal, but a ruchnistic goal. The life of our neshamas in the future, right? And that's then the motivation for tshuva, right? And therefore, in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam says, since we know that the he's trying to emphasize that the goal is really ruchnius, so therefore he says that all the shefa gashmi that we're going to have in the future is just a way. It's a means to an end. The kima mitzvahs ayad. That the gashmistika shefa that we're going to have is really just a means to be able to keep all the mitzvahs properly, which will then bring us to that final ruchnistika goal that we're going to have in Chayil Olam Haba. The Hilchos Melech HaMashiach, Hamam Medaber al Kavanas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lizgalas Malchusa B'Chol HaBriya. But in the Halachos of Melech HaMashiach, the Rambam emphasizes the Kavanah of Hashem to reveal His Malchus in this world. Shezel Kolokim Kol Mitzvahs U'Pulasim Ba'Olam. That includes, when we talk about what Hashem wants in this world, it includes the fulfillment of all the mitzvahs and the effect that those mitzvahs will have on the world when they are done properly. Therefore, fitting in with that goal, the Svar Mashma'usa Shel HaShefa HaGashmi K'Taitzah Mikim HaMitzvahs Ba'Olam. And therefore, in Hilchos Melech HaMashiach, the Rambam explains the Shefa, the Gashmis that's going to be there as a result of keeping the mitzvahs. And again, just reminding us that this is something we spoke about in the very, very beginning of our Sefer, when we said, when we think about what is the times of Mashiach going to look like, and we talked about the difference between seeing it from a person's point of view, from like the employee's point of view, or seeing it from the employer's point of view, right? So if we say that it's about the employee wants to know what's in it for him. He works for someone in order to get some sort of benefit, to get paid for whatever it might be. And so from that point of view of what's in it for me, in Hilchos Tshuva, where the Rambam really emphasized what's in it for a person, whatever the Rambam is saying there is seeing it from that perspective. So it's about Chai Olam Haba, and it's about the ruchnistic things that we're going to have, and it's about a human being being able to use his brain as much as possible and to try to gain as much as he can in knowledge of the world, so that he knows about Hashem. But when we look at it from the employer's point of view, in other words, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's point of view, it's not just about that. It's more about it's about this world being a dwelling place, a place where Hashem is completely revealed in this world. And that emphasis of that side of it is what is written in Hilchos Mashiach. So, okay, and here we go back to what I just said. So these two things about where Shevet Mitzvahs B'nai Noach fits in, and what the world is going to be looking like, and whether the Shefa is in order to make it easier to do mitzvahs, or whether the Shefa is a tetzah for the mitzvahs, we can go back to explain, to showing the parallel between this and what I just mentioned about the purpose of the world in general. Like we mentioned before, the Parish of Mishnah is because of a Rambam Shetachlis Alam Hu Shiyah Ba Ish Chacham Yedei Hashem. So in Parish of Mishnah, like we saw at the very beginning again of our Sefer, there was the idea of looking at it from the point of Chakira, from the point of Nigla, of Halacha, and the point of Pneumis Torah. So in Parish of Mishnah is where the Rambam talks about the tachlis of the world is to have, for a person to know as much as he can about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore Mashiach is going to be a very Ish Chacham who knows Hashem. And therefore there in Parashat Mishnah, the Rambam explains that everything that exists in this world is leading us to that matara of knowing Hashem. So everything in this world that's lower in the world, like lower on the chain of creation, we have done anything that's lower down on the list serves what is above it. And then everything in the world is therefore serving that great chacham and helping him b'shleimus. And again, was the idea of like when you have a king and you have people, and you have the lay people, you have the farmers, you have the people who do very menial job, and you have people who are then oversee them, and the people who oversee them, the people who oversee them, until you come to the servants of the king himself, and you come to the king himself, and everybody's there just to serve the king, right? Just to know the king. So we can take this and say, okay, so we can apply this to the times of Mashiach. world will be at its perfection. Kasher tar b'hadas v'chachma emes will have there will be an abundance of knowledge and chachma and true chachma. Shashefa gashmi shashem ashpia yisparish kisiyuli yisrael b'avaydasam. And that idea, in line with Perish Mishnayos, right? The shefa gashmi that's in this world is just there to help in Israel in their avayda. Again, as we explained in Hilchos Tshuva. The Chaim Ashmalsum shall be Tzusum shall Umas B'Sheva Mitzvah Shalhem. The Sparish Gam Ba'os Derech Kisiyul Avayda Sam Shal Yisrael. And then parallel with this kind of idea, it's again the idea that the Ubas Ha'olam and Sheva Mitzvahs is a way is there just to help in Israel fulfill their mitzvahs. However, if we say that the point of this whole world is for Hashem to be a melech, it's not even a dir b'tachtanim yet, but as a melech, as a king, which is the mitzvahs, and everything Hashem created is just for His honor. That means that every single thing in the world has its own purpose. That with it and through it, the machos of Hashem is revealed in the world. And then the order is exactly the opposite. Then it's not that it everything else helps, rather that the machos of Hashem first gets revealed over the Jewish people. And then through Bnei Yisrael, those machos get spread to the nations of the world. And then that works the other way. Then that affects the chai and the tameach and the daimim, who are going downwards until everything is fitting with the Torah. So again, two ways to look at it. Everything in the world is created for human beings, so therefore even daimim, the water is here, so and the air is here, so we can breathe, and the plants are here, so we can eat, right? And the animals are here, and the whole ecosystems that exist in this world are only here for the human being, and therefore everything is here just to help us do Torah mitzvahs, or exactly the other way around, that it's really here because of Machos Hashem. And when we reveal Machos Hashem in this world through doing the Torah mitzvahs as we are supposed to do after Matan Torah, and we spread that to the nations of the world, then that has an effect also on the animals and on the plants and on the daimim of this world, that everything is then fitting in and everything reaches its full potential, and hence we have the nevuah, or the many nevuahs of the time of Moshiach, when everything is going to be so big and so large, and there's going to be so much shefa in the physical world. And this fits in with the order and with the version of the Rambam in Hilchos Melech Mashiach, where the Rambam first talks about the return of Machos based David. Then he explains how there's going to be the rectification of all the nations of the world. And only after that does he explain about the abundance that's going to be in the physical world. The Rambam does not mention at all that they're dependent on one another. So here at the end, the Rambam does not talk about it in the sense that the nations are going to be a help for Bnei Israel. Rather, the Rambam talks about it as one continuation. It starts off with Bnei Israel, revelation of Machos Hashem through Moshiach, that brings about ability to keep all the mitzvahs, that brings about the tikkun of the world, that brings about the shefa, all as one tremendous continuation. And that concludes this particular chapter on what is the effect of Moshiach on the world and how that all fits together. So we've now hit our halfway mark, and so we have time to start our next chapter, which is Perek Asiri. The idea we know, we've heard so much about the idea of Zachul and Achishena. Achishena or Ita, the idea of the two different ways that Mashiach can come. So we are first going to look at the first part, when we talked about Zachul, that if Bnei Israel merited Achishena, Mashiach can come before the end time. The idea of Bias Mashiach in a way of Nes and Pella. Rivki, can I hand over to you? Okay.
Le'el Perek Tes, Hubu Divrei Haramam, Shemataras Bias Mashiach, B'Talif Tivi L'Chair Shal Malchama B'Nitzachim, Umadgish Al Yale Adat HaShemelch Mashiach Tzarech L'Seis Eises Moifsim, Ina Devakim. Bikar Dvarim Kacha Hin HaShatayra Hazeis Pukel Mishpatel Li'Olam U'La'olmei Olam. So So in Perek Ches, we brought the words of the Rambam that describes the coming of Mashiach in a natural process of war and victory, and he stresses that we shouldn't think that Melech HaMashiach has to do miracles. It's not like that. The main thing is that the Torah and its all its mitzvahs are forever and will be. The question is bar le'el kavanasai shatoila es bias HaMashiach ba'esus moisim hareze bestira le'ikar until nitzchis haTorah shamur lezgashim ba'olam hazeh b'agbolos hateva shalai. And we explain there what the Rama means, that if we say that Moshiach depends on the fact that there will be miracles, so this is exactly the opposite of the rule of the
Principle, the principle, foundational, yeah.
Of the principle that Torah is nitzchi, that Torah is forever, and that's why it and it has to be in this Gashmistika world, in the teva of this world. We have to be able.
Right, so that's what we. Right, so we discussed this at length in an earlier chapter, right? Why we say that Mashiach doesn't have to do miracles. Yet we know Mashiach could do miracles. So that's what we want to look at now. We explained why it doesn't have to be, but now we understand what about the possibility of it actually being that way.
בפרק זה יסבאר לידך כיסא. לאמיתו של דבר ביס המשיח אינה עניין טבעי אלא עניין ניסי. But in this paragraph, we're going to explain the opposite, that in the truth, Bias Mashiach is not something natural, it is something miraculous. Aleph, Hatzir HaTivi L'Cha'ir Shel Zdas HaMashiach Ein Ela Levush Tivi L'Inyan Al Tivi L'Chinas Nesam Slavish B'Teva. So we're going to explain this with 3 points. First of all, the seemingly natural description of Mashiach's being revealed, it's only a levush of Teva, in something that is higher than Teva. It's a nace that is enclosed in Teva.
Right, so we have to really redefine when we say the Teva, that Mashiach has to come naturally, what do we actually mean by that? Okay, secondly.
במצב של זוכו, הגיעו השלמת תהיה בניסים גלויים, כפי שהרמב"ם מתיר במקומות אחרים. וגם במצב של לא יזוכו, כאשר גאולה תתחיל בדרך של לבוש טבעי, הרי בהמשך הזמן, ישראל יעלו מדרגה לדרגה, עד שיזכו לדרגה עליונה של הגאולה בניסים גלויים. So, if it will be zochu, if we will merit it, then the Geula Shlema will be with revealed miracles, like the Rambam explains in other places. But even if it will be Loi Zachu, if we did not merit, then the Geula will start out in this enclosed in nature, but then Bnei Yisrael will go up in level till they will be zeichet to the higher level of the Geula, which includes Nisim, a revealed Nisim. Gimel, yesh leimer shedarga zu shel haGeula hi ikar inyanei shel Mashiach, ze davka tzricha yes emunah v'tzipiyah. And the third point is that we could say that this higher level of Geula is the main point of Mashiach, and for this we do have to believe, and we do have to wait for it. להבנת הדברים בפרטיות, יש להקדים ולביינים בדברי רמב"ם עדס הגדרס המושגים טבע ונס, והנהגסם של בני ישראל בדרך טבע או בדרך נס. ומזה נשב נביא מנהגי להנהגסי הניסים של מלך המשיח וכדלקמן. To understand this in detail, we have to preface it with the words of the Rambam about the ideas of Teva and Nes, and the behavior of Bnei Yisrael in a way of Teva and in a way of Nes, and then we will be able to return and understand the actions the miraculous actions of Melech Mashiach.
Right. So really what we need to do is come back and say, wait a second. So when we say the word teva, when we say the word nes, especially in the words, looking at how the Rambam uses that terminology, we have to go back and really look at that definition. When we understand that definition, we can then come back to this and say, okay, so when we talk about Mashiach coming b'derech teva, b'derech nes, what do we actually mean? Okay, so let's go. What do we know about Bnei Israel in general and our survival in general over all the years?
And Hagas Bnei Israel, my face mitam.
Huh? It's like a masmid.
Ah,
right?
my face masmid?
Yeah, it's like it's constant. It's a constant miracle, right? So we are a constant miracle. That's where the word masmid comes from, right? A masmid, someone who's supposed to be sitting and learning.
Yeah,
okay. So
Igeres tchis ameisim, mevar Rama medishnei sugei nisim, nisim hefsharim, b'derech hateva, v'she'ena, uv'loshen sham. So in the Rambam's letter about tchis ameisim, he explains two types of nisim. Nisim that are possible according to teva, and those that are not. And in his words there, and the flois pamim hi binyanim hanimnoim, bilti efsharim, b'teva. So the wonders sometimes are in things that are impossible in nature, like when the staff turned to a snake, and when the earth opened and swallowed up Kairach, and when the Yam Suf was split. כבוי הערבה והבורד והדבר במצרים, כדרך מיני אלו הדברים שירו במקצס העיתים במקצס המקיימס, וכרדס המוטר הסייכת בזמן הקוצר על ידי שמואל, והברוכס והקולץ הנזכרס בתרא. Sometimes these are things that are possible according to the laws of nature, like the Arbe Bored and Dever in Mitzrayim, because these things do happen sometimes in some places. And the stormy rain that fell in the time of Shmuel in the wrong time, in the time of Katzer, I guess around Pesach, and the brachas and kolos that are mentioned in the Torah. Because achas mehen efshar b'chol eretz b'chol zman, v'hem kulam mikas ha'efshari, mikutzas ha'inyanim ha'mugdarim ke'efshariyim, k'shistakel ha'adam lahem. Because each of these are possible in any place, in any time. So they're all in the gather of things that are possible if a person will examine them. ואומנם יהיו העניינים האלו האפשריים מופתעים, נחשבים כמייחס, ואחד משלושה התנאים אי בכולם. So these things that are possible, they are considered miracles in one of the three
conditions. So under, so if we have, right, so we have one of these following three conditions or all of these conditions at the same time, that these things that are actually possible, we consider them miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
What has to happen for these natural things to become considered miraculous?
האחד מהם, בוי האפשר ההוא באייס מיימר הנביא בשווה. כמו שבא בשמואל אקרא להשם ייתן קהילס וגיימר ויקרא שמואל להשם ייתן קהילס ומטר ביום ההוא. So one of them is if it happened at the time when the Navi said it, if it happened exactly the way the Navi said it.
That's right.
Okay. So, like it is about Shmuel Navi, that he said, I'm going to call to Hashem, and Hashem will make this thunder and rain. And Shmuel called to Hashem, and that's exactly what happened on that day. Okay, so then we know it's miracle because he asked for it, and it happened exactly that. Batnai Sheni, Zaris ha'efsher hahu al kol אפשר ממנו, כמוי שבא בארבע, ולפניו לא היה כן הארבע כמוהו, ואחריו לא יהיה כן. So the second condition is, what does zarais mean?
It's bizarre. It's strange. So that thing that's possible is it happened in a very strange way. It was stranger than normal. So for example, locust, like there are plenty of places that have locust plates, right? But why was it considered, why would we say, oh, it was a miracle, like the Makkah, is because Torah says very specifically, we just read this in the Parsha last week, right? That there was never an arbor like that ever, and it never will be afterwards. So it was an unusual
natural event.
Exactly.
המשך האפשר ההוא המסחדש והסמדוסי כברוכס והכלולס, כאילו היה פעם אחת השתיים לא היה מויפס, והוא נאמר שהוא במקרא. So the third condition is that this happening continues constantly, like by the brachas and klalos, because if it was just once or twice, then you wouldn't say it's miraculous. You would say that it just happened. What does he mean by the brachas and klalos? Like that actually happens when we sin, or that actually happens when
That's right, and they're like ongoing things, right? So we talk about, let's say, the gallows or the things that happen. That it's not just a one-off; it goes on and on and on.
נמצא בידינו שכאשר עניין טבעי לכאורה מופיע בצורה בלתי רגילה או בתזמון בלתי רגיל, הרי הוא נחשב לנס. So we see that if something natural happens in a way that is not regular or timing not regularly, then we consider it a nes. כיוון שבר הדבר המאורע הזה לא קרה מתוך סיבת הטבע כשלעצמן, אלא כוח עליון השולט על מהלכי הטבע כיוון זויס. Because then it's obvious that this happening did not happen just by natural means, but there's a higher power that has control over the nature in this way. ובסגנון אחר, הגדרת הנס אינה מתייחסת רק לצורה שבה הדבר קורה, אלא גם בעיקר לסיבה שהמאורע קרה, ולכן גם מאורע שצורתו היא צורת טבעית, אך בר הדבר שסיבתו אינה סיבה טבעית, הרי הוא נס. So, saying it a little differently, the specifications of a nes is not only in the way that it happened, but also and even mainly in the reason that it happened. And therefore, something that happened in a natural way, but it's obvious that the reason that it happened was not natural, so this is considered a nes. That was probably the third tonight, no?
Yeah.
Well,
not only the third one, but also the first one, right? If it happens because the Novi says specifically for it to happen, right? So then it's the reason it's happening, yeah?
ושם הביא זויס הרמב"ם בכדי לבאר הסדר ההנהגה התמידי של עם ישראל. So there the Rambam brought it in order to explain the constant behavior of Bnei Israel. שכל המאורע שקרם לעם ישראל בכל הדורות, אינם אלא הסגשמוס של הברכות והכללות שהבטיחה התורה על קיום המצוות והחום, ולפיכך הם עניין ניסי ולא טבעי, ובלשון הרמב"ם שם. So all that happened to Am Yisrael and all the generations are only the fulfillment of the brachas and klalos that the Torah promised for keeping the mitzvahs and for the opposite of that. And therefore they are miraculous and not natural, as the Rambam says there. Because it didn't just happen once, it happens all the time. So that shows that it's...
Well, not only happened, but it's the reason for it happening. In other words, when things are going well for Bnei Israel, it's because Hashem is making them go well. So even though it looks like Teva, because Bnei Israel are Bechlal above Teva, anything that's happening to them is because Hashem is making it happen that way, which in a way is then Nisi, okay? Because it's happening for a particular reason. It's happening because it says so in the Torah. And this is what the Rambam writes, his actual words. Go ahead.
וזה הפחידם ויהי אדם,
Hifchidam.
ולזה הפחידם ויהי אדם הטוב והרע בעניינים ממהרים לבוי אם ישמעו ואם לא ישמעו. And therefore Hashem steered them and let them know the good and the bad that will come in things that come quickly. If they will, that it will come quickly if they don't listen or if they will listen, or just the opposite. Okay? They listen if they don't listen. The Kvar Zocher b'Torah, Shehu Meites Masmit, Ritzoni Leimar Tikun Inyanim Im Havoida V'Efseidam Im Hameri. So this is already mentioned in Torah as a constant miracle, meaning to say that these things could be fixed and these things are lost with of going against, meaning if you have them or you don't have them, it has to do with behavior.
Exactly.
Amar v'hayu b'chol ha'os u'moifes u'b'zarach ad olam. As it says that you will be a sign and a miracle forever. When ze amru ein mazel Yisrael, v'tzayim leimar shetikunam v'hefsedam einam l'siba tivis v'loy al minhag hametzias ela nitla ba'avoda u'b'meri. And that's why it says that there's no mazel by Yidden, meaning to say that they're the good that happens to them and that which when they lose out is not for natural reasons and not for how they, not because of the situation in the world, but they are, it is dependent on their avodah or the opposite, their rebellion. And this is a bigger miracle and sign than any other. הוא המכוון גם כן באומרו אשר חילק השם אלוקיך עושים לכל העמים ואסכם לקח השם. So this was also explained in the din between the public and the private. And this idea itself is also, we'll understand this idea also from that which it says that we are part of Hashem.
Right?
Hashem separated us from everyone, and Hashem took us. Hashem So it means to say that the situation of Bnei Yisrael is not like how Hashem deals with Bnei Yisrael is not how he deals with the other nations. But Hashem made here a big miracle in the fact that their actions are always connected with either when things will be good or when they will lose out on things. What's the difference between Tzibur and Yachid if this is if the general public population sin?
That's right. So whether things happen, that's right. So whether we're talking about things that happen to Bnei Israel as a klal or to any individual, right? Hashem, that's what we say, Ein Mazel Yisrael, because we have the power of tshuva, and everything that happens in this world, we have to say, what can I do about it, right? Hashem is sending me a message. And that's how it always was.
So it is if it's public or it's private, it's both. It's in both.
It's both.
Meaning So we can add to this not only that which happens to Bnei Yisrael is according, meaning when it's good for them or when they lose out, that these are
Tikkunim, based on their
miraculous.
rectification. Like based on tikkunim, it's based on them fixing themselves up, right? Or based on what they lose out on, right? It's not just based on our things, but the flow, our whole existence is a miracle.
The fact that we exist as a nation is miraculous and not according to the rules of Teva. Ki alpi haseder haragil sham hagas ha'olam kol hoive nifsad v'chol kibbutz soifei lipared v'lochein hamusag nitzchius bechlal einoi kayam b'meskeres hateva shel olamenu. Is according to the way the world works, everything has its end. Everything is going to be at some point separated or left, will leave, and therefore there's no idea of eternity in the natural, in the nature of our world.
We know that everything that is going to break down. Everything that exists disintegrates, right? Decomposes at some point. Anything that it's put together eventually falls apart, right? So in nature, right, in the science of the world, there's nothing that's infinite. Nothing lasts forever. Okay.
בכלל זה תקף גם לגבי קיבוץ אנושי, כמו מציוסו של כל אומה המורכבת מקיבוץ אנשים רבים, שסוף כל סוף כל אומה וממלכה עובר זמנה, ותחתיה כל אומות וממלכות חדשות. So this also is in the gatherings of people, because every nation is made up of a group of many people, and at some point, every nation and every kingdom, his time will end, and in his place will rise other nations and other kingdoms. But about Bnei Yisrael, the Rambam writes that all the nations end, but they will stand. As the Rambam writes in Igeres Teiman, that the way, just the same way that there's no way that Hashem's Mitzias will be batal, so there's no way that our nation will be batal or be lost from this world. And it's based on the pasuk where it says, "I am Hashem who will not change, and you, the sons of Yaakov, will not end or not be destroyed."
Not only I will not change, I did not change. Right? See, like we say in the morning, right? Before the world created, after the world created, Hashem never changes. Just like Hashem has never changed, so too Bnei Yaakov will never be finished off.
My mouse is in the way. Shenitzchias Bnei Yisrael hi mikoyach nitzchias haboyre. As Rebbe explains, that the eternity of the Bnei Yisrael is from the koyach of eternity of the Creator. Shekhem Hashem Yisparach L'mayla Malbal Sateva v'shinoi hazman kach kiyumam shel Yisrael hu nitzchi b'loi shinoi l'mayla miderach hateva. The way Hashem is higher than any limitations of Teva and any changes of time, so the existence of Bnei Yisrael is also eternal without any change and higher than Teva. In fact, Hashem's b'yinim b'ma she'ovar al am Yisrael me'oz ha'yosei she'b'chol dar v'dor ein d'leina chalaseinu. V'fi kol ha'chashbonos ha'tivim lo yamokayim sham Yisrael yavos ha'golos harucha zu yisudu ka'am. And especially when we look at what Bnei Yisrael went through from the time of its inception, that in every generation those stood and wanted to destroy us. And according to all the natural calculations, there's no way that Bnei Israel could have survived this long galus and survived as a nation. It's only because Hashem saved us from their hands in Hashgacha, that Hashem is openly taking care of us, a constant miracle. When something is constant, you forget that it's a miracle.
Exactly, and that's the point. So, well, good. Look, so here we talked about, Mashiach is going to come. It's going to be Derech HaTeva. We have to remember that Derech HaTeva is actually a miracle. We, Bnei Yisrael, we are a miracle. We just forget it sometimes. So Hashem knocks us on the head and says, remember that you don't exist because you think you're strong. You're only here because I'm here.
Oh.
And we get painful reminders every so often, and it's enough already. We can have Moshiach, and we don't need any more of these painful reminders.
And now we could understand accordingly about Bias Mashiach. הברוכה שבתורה, שבוודא אין בו בסיבס טבעיס, אלא זוהי ערבוס הליקיס במהלך הטבע, והנס הכי גדול שבכל ההיסטוריה. That if all that happened to Bnei Israel in all these generations are not natural but miracles, so even more so when we talk about Bias Mashiach, that this is the end and the purpose of all the brachas of the Torah. So of course, it will not come from natural reasons, but it is with the hand of Hashem in Teva, and this will be the biggest nace in all of our history.
Exactly. I think we will finish here because we don't have time to go on to the next section. So ultimately, we have to remember and never forget, right? That Hashem is always with us. And B'derech HaTeva, no matter what goes on, it has no bearing on Bnei Yisrael. Right? Any Masl Yisrael. Okay, so let me, Bach wants to ask a question. So let me just, right, we will continue with Mashiach.
Amen.
No. Why does this?
Thank you so much. I mean,
Rifki, you want to stop the recording? Because I can't seem to stop it. It doesn't want to stop for me.
let me try.
She left. Now she won't be able to cry. When you press on record, what does it tell you?
Doesn't want to stop.
Here on the bottom, record.
Nope. Bracha, Rifki can, Rifki's lost. She went off. Rifki can always cut the end. So if you have a question, go ahead. We'll just tell her to cut the end of the recording. Another time. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good. Are you going to the kiddos?
No, it's the first day of school.
Right. Wow.
I can't do it this year. It's like really, literally, it's school starts February 1st.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's like, right, yeah, it's like not gonna happen here.
All right. Should be with Hatzlacha. Just
You-
find out
you
from
wish
Rivka
mine.
in advance if she's going and if we're gonna have the lesson. So it's not a last minute decision.
Oh, you mean next week already? Oh, no,
It
next
could be
week.
she won't fly so quickly. The kiddo starts Thursday. It could be she won't fly Tuesday, but
Oh, right, okay. I guess we'll figure it out, let people know in advance, so it doesn't have to
yeah,
be last minute.
it helps me arrange my day.
Okay, are
Thank
you
you.
going?
No, we have a wedding, Bezos Hashem, in Israel in a week, in
Right.
a month. Oh, for sure.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Jen.
Simchos.